Let me just make sure that I'm up and running. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Cool. I have been not here lately. I started a new job Monday. Very similar to the last job, just pays more, better opportunities, less criminal management, all the good things. So that's taken a lot of attention. I got a new fancy mic, as some of you are noticing. It's got the, see that? It's got that thing. It extends. Thank you, Ende, for the mic. It's actually really fucking badass. And it comes with a little tripod stand, so I can set it up. I can do a quick set. I don't have to have the whole get up, but I wanted to play with the whole get up, of course. And it's more than, I'm gonna have to figure out my ergonomics. But and I think that you mentioned something about when I'm in the car. I think I can find a way to use this. I just need an adapter. And I have one somewhere. But thank you. So let's see. So that's where I've been. I got a fancy new mic. This is my first time using it. I will link her channel in the comments below to show appreciation. Anything else you want me to link? Websites, Instagram. She's got a wide range of web reach. Yeah, it does please the SC. Does please the SC. And it pleases me to have the weekend and some time and some energy. I mean, I came home from work and took a few hour nap. This is the new job I'm doing is not as cushy as the last one, which was about the only redeeming value the last job had at all still was that it was cushy. I had an office. I had basically, and I still haven't actually, I've got a loft now. It's cool. I'll have to find some place. I'll put pictures of it in the Facebook group. But the last job had an office, and I basically, over the almost 2 years I was there, sort of navigated my way through office politics to having zero accountability to anyone, really, which is kind of how everything in my life has to operate, but it's not a good reason to be somewhere. So this is a much better move. Go White Cat. And that's where I've been. That's where I will be. I saw an article on topic, Hygiene Gray. I saw an article, and that's the topic of this live stream because it's just because it needs to be addressed. The article is linked below in the description box, and it's titled "Domestic Abusers and Stalkers Should Sign National Registers Like Sex Offenders," Commons Report says. And it's a British newspaper, and it's talking about the British, their politicians. Domestic abusers and stalkers should be forced to sign a national register like sex offenders says a cross-party report. They should be monitored under the same arrangements as rapists and pedophiles, giving greater protection to victims who live in fear of their tormentors. They're saying it's urgent. The perpetrator would have to register with police within 72 hours of being convicted. Lots of agencies involved, help address risks, blah, 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 blah. So even though it's English and it still applies here a lot in America, we have the National Sex Offender Registry that everyone's familiar with. And in certain states, there are violent. Is that what she's complaining about? I don't know, but I have the litter box in here and the door shut. And so there's a National Sex Offender Registry, which everybody is generally big supporters of. I am not. And certain states register drug and violent offenders. About half the states, if I remember correctly, register those two things. And it's all under the narrative of public safety. I am a registered drug offender in Kansas, which means that any state that registers drug offenders, I have to register in. To be a registered drug offender, I believe that sex offenders have any sex crime gets you registered unless your lawyer works out a plea deal where you don't have to. Violent offenders, I'm not sure of the mechanics or the details of it. I'd imagine that any violent felony of a certain severity, probably you can have a battery charge and not be a registered offender. But once you get your second, or once you really fuck somebody up, you're probably on it. With the drug offenders, that is anybody who's convicted as a drug dealer. So, because I'm a convicted of distribution, not simple possession, I'm a drug offender. You can find me on the KBI website. You shouldn't though, because my last mugshot was very bad. And it's for 15 years I have to register. Most offenders register for life. If I move to a state that doesn't register drug offenders, like Missouri, I don't have to worry about it at all. I just let Kansas know I'm moving out of state, and then I'm completely off the grid. If I don't register, so to register properly, you have to check in every 3 months, and every 3 months you get a new picture put up on the website. You have to update them on their, all your information so that they can make it publicly available for the public safety. Or anytime you start or stop employment, school, or residence in any new spot. So I'm in Wyandotte County. If I quit my job and took one in Johnson County, I would then have to tell Wyandotte's sheriff, I'm not working here anymore, I'm working there, and go to Johnson County and say, I'm starting work here now within 3 days, or else you could be charged with a low-level non-person felony for not registering. Now, drug offender registrations are stupid. I've never heard anybody ever defend them. It's really just it's a feather in a prosecutor's hat. It's also a bargaining chip. So they can, like in my plea deal, I had registered for 15 years. Fine. In the court documents, the prosecutor, Tracy Beverly, gets to look like she's hard on crime. However, I only registered for 15 years, so there is a light at the end of the tunnel if I want to stay in Kansas. I don't know why anybody would want to stay in Kansas. Just fuck this state. drug offender registries are stupid just conceptually. Even if you thought they worked properly, and you've got a map of drug dealers in your area, well, what's the public threat? I mean, I know that there's kind of the boogeyman reputation drug dealers have of driving around and shooting people and all that bullshit. But in reality, I wasn't walking around throwing meth in kids' eyeballs. That shit's expensive. It's just a circle jerk of bureaucracy. It costs taxpayers money. I know here in Wyandotte, there's a department of, I believe it's it's 4 full-time employees, 3 sheriff's officers, and 1 like clerical lady, the secretary who takes your ID and stuff. And all they do is register offenders, and once a week they take people's pictures. The new batch of people who have their concealed carry permit, they go up there to get their pictures taken. But it's stupid. It's a joke. It costs taxpayers a lot of money. It costs us money. We're supposed to pay $20 every 3 months when we do our renewal. If you don't have the $20, and they only take cash or money order. So if you don't have the $20 or can't pay, you still go in, and they just, oh, well, we'll put it on your tab. I owe like I owe like quite a bit. I owe most of the money because I never carry cash. And when I do carry cash, it's not like around 20. It's like change from around 20 or 50. I used to carry 50s a lot. But I used to have a lot more money to carry around. So anyways, I digressed into my own stories. So anyways, I saw this article that a friend posted on Facebook, and it's one of those topics that you can't, I was the only one who said it was a bad idea. It's one of those things that you can't, when you've got somebody posting this article, and then, and she's, clearly a woman, and then you have all the women leaving comments in strong support of, we need to register these stalkers, these abusers, blah, 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 they're bad people. There's no possible way, really. I mean, it's not easy. There's not an easy route for anybody to disagree with that group opinion without looking like an asshole chauvinist. So I disagreed with her, and now I'm being public about it. And the problem is, actually, I meant to send her a message to let her know that this was happening and this was her fault. I'm just going to do that. So the problem with this idea, as well as the problem with all offender registries, and really, God fucking like all government protection, anytime the government has to save people from risks, this is going to be a problem in that policy or that system. But it for sure holds with offender registries. Here's the link. This video is your doing, period. And I got to leave the LOL in so that people know that I'm joking. Because my sarcastic voice, even off text, my sarcastic voice sounds a lot like my not sarcastic voice. So the problem is that what people want and what the government delivers are not hardly the same thing at all. What people want with offender registries is they want protection from dangerous people. That's reasonable. What they want with sex registries is they want to know who are the deviant child pedophiles and child molesters is how that newspaper article described sex offenders. But sex offenders are also my buddy Tom from high school, who got caught. He had a party at his house when we were freshmen in college, and the police showed up. Actually, a fucking SWAT team showed up. But they showed up while he was outside taking a leak in the bushes on the side of the house in the dark alone. I mean, the bathroom in the house was full. He went outside to the bushes. And he's a sex offender now because public urination is a sex offense, as are many other not creepy things. I don't know the specifics. I'm not a sex offender. It's it's the bottom tier of society's. I mean, if there's law-abiding citizens, and then there's law-abiding citizens, non-law-abiding citizens who haven't gotten caught, right? Like your low-level criminals, and then convicted felons, and then registered offenders. Registered sex offenders are like way at the bottom. They're the bottom rung of society, no matter how you slice it. And I mean, everywhere in prison, and chomos have basically their own camp, their own prisons. They have to be isolated with only each other, or else they'll get fucked up. And that's how it is everywhere, not just in Kansas. Kansas prisons certainly aren't that rough by any means, but the last time I got arrested, no, the second to last time I got arrested, the jailer knew me and tried to put me in with this old dude whose current charge. He was somebody in Pratt who law enforcement just tormented endlessly for years. They left him in jail for over a year one time in county jail for a DUI. That's super illegal. But illegal shit happens all the time. Anyways, he was in a 2-man cell, not in general population, because his current run of crimes was statutory rape or something. Who knows if it was true, or if it's just Tracy being an overzealous prosecutor. Tracy Beverland, that's you. But he was in a 2-man cell by himself. The jailer felt bad for him, tried to put me in there with him. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it for a lot of reasons, one of which is that affiliation would rub onto me. And let's say he bonds out in a week or two. Well, the rest of the jail knows me as the cellmate of the pedo. And if I'm not beating his ass or stealing his food or, extorting him, then there's sort of it insinuates that I'm okay with those type of people. And inmates, just like everybody on the outside, there you hear sex offender and your mind automatically thinks the worst. You see someone's been charged with a crime, and the first thought is, oh my God, he did that. When I can tell you from experience, that's not the case. A lot of times people are very much brought in on trumped up charges, including sex crimes. I never had any sex charges, but I did have one that was certainly a violent one. And kind of an icky violent one too. It got dropped. It was unsubstantiated and unfounded, but it was part of the plea package. So anyways, sex offenders have their own camps. They will get destroyed in prison. They get destroyed out of prison. Last time I was registering, I talked to the cop who was taking my picture and updating my information. And I said, I was just sort of asking him about the offender registry because he's a real nice guy. and he doesn't. The sheriffs that work in these departments registering offenders don't seem to be advocates of them. They're always giving advice to the offenders, trying to help them comply, warning them not to do this or do that. And the last time I was coming in behind somebody who's young guy, this was his first registry, and he was taking for fucking ever, asking all the questions that I remember asking my first time. And the cops really, at least here in Wyandott's the only county in Kansas, in my experience, worth fucking with. Really, trying to help these dudes in this situation. But I was kind of prodding around, getting his feel for what he thinks of the offender registry programs, and he said, I made some joke about how it doesn't prevent any crime, and his response was, it causes it. Especially in Kansas, where they register violent and drug offenders as well as sex offenders. He said, we get calls all the time because people look at the offender registry and see houses light up in their neighborhood, and then call the sheriffs freaking out because they think there's a sex offender by them, or too close to the school, which there's no school zoning laws on that, but wanting the sheriffs to do something about it when they're mistaken. It's just little old me. It didn't happen to me, but that happens a lot. They get a lot of calls with people bugging out because they misinterpret the data. They also said, there are people that use offender registries to hunt. Really, they're looking for pedophiles to beat the shit out of. If you're an angry dude, and I'm not one to talk down on angry guys getting in recreational fights, but that is something they do. They look up offender registries, find pedophiles or sex offenders, and go beat up those people. I've never been involved on either side of that shitbag. I could always find plenty of people to fight without having to go to an internet list. And I don't fight recreationally anymore. I grew the fuck up. But so if anything, they cause violence. What they don't do is what society wants to do. Society wants to be warned and safe from the real scumbags. Which is reasonable, but it's not what they get. What they get is certain members of the system being output. There is nothing requiring offender registration status for, I don't believe so. I might be talking a little bit out of my ass, but there's nothing. The offender registry can be used like a negotiation chip for prosecutors. And that's what it should be primarily seen as. That's what it is. I believe Jeffrey Epstein, in his thing, he did not have to register as an offender. He either didn't have to or he didn't comply with it. But either way, I mean, it just goes to show the failure of that system. The failure of that system, that like, this is probably the dude you want to know about most, and it didn't work. It didn't happen. Whereas my buddy Tom, hopefully no one's looking for Tom, because he's a tall dude but skinny as fuck. He's like 6'4" and 150 pounds. He's going to be in trouble if some rednecks want to come get revenge. In addition to that, you have the whole baggage of the criminal justice system, the legal system, the girl who posted this article, I understand that she's had a personal go of it with her ex, and I sympathize to that. I also have a crazy fucking ex who I'm not going to go into that right now. But what charges and convict when I see charges or convictions or any inclusion on a list, reports of crime, all of that shit to me, I've been so disillusioned with the effectiveness of the criminal justice system that I don't assume anything except that cops and prosecutors decided to charge this person. That's it. It doesn't mean they're guilty in my head. It doesn't mean they're innocent. My faith in the criminal justice system is so fucky that a person's criminal record and convictions literally doesn't mean anything except that there's a story there to me. And what people get is more bureaucracy, more overhead, more ways for the criminal justice system to capitalize on people's fear to continue to expand itself. I mean, the criminal justice system, law enforcement, all that shit, everybody whose job it is to keep you safe from criminals has a big interest in there being criminals. That's their fucking job. That's why I'll never live in another rural county again. They're way too desperate for criminals. That's how I turned into the fucking local ass Scarface. It was retarded. But what people want and what people think they're getting, they're not getting. At surface, at just face value, the demand for registries does not deliver the solution that is desired from it. It doesn't. Government's really shitty at providing solutions to problems. This article said that, I got to find this quote. This is a quote from some bitch. Victims of stalking often endure years of abuse before the crime is taken seriously. We were told that existing criminal responses were often ineffective in stopping perpetrators. Yes. The problem here is with stalking and domestic situations. I know in Kansas, stalking, no, abuse. To get a protection from abuse in Kansas, there has to have been a relationship, a sexual relationship, girlfriend. I've had them filed against me. I've filed them against people. It's not the protection from abuse, the protection from stalking orders. They're not used in a way that is intended. The way that you think of it when you read a headline is not how it is. It's not how it's used. It's not how anybody in the system expects it to be used. I am not going to tell that story, but they're very much legal maneuvers more than anything. It's a legal maneuver that people can get for free quickly based on nothing more than a claim. To get a protection from abuse order, I had to list 2 incidents of recent 2 incidents that happened recently that either included abuse against me or where I was afraid for abuse against me, right? So I have to be afraid twice and I have to list the person, and it's put in place until a court date where the judges typically extend them because uh, uh, or continue them even at hearings. It's very easy for a judge to defend enforcing a restraining order. It's very difficult for a judge to defend dropping a restraining order as invalid if something then happens. So these things are generally just sort of filed through with protection for stalking, protection from abuse, based on claims of the victim, which is already kind of a problem with, well, any crime where a woman is a victim of a man. I mean, that's the truth of it. Women can claim something happened if they put on a decent show of it, or if the prosecutor or cop wants to believe them. They got it. I've got a story about that. When I was in jail the last time I went in, I was there for a few months. And when I got arrested this last time and went into general population, well, really went into jail, I had the second highest charges of anybody in the whole jail this time around. I think I'd always been right up there in the top 2 or 3, but the one who had the highest charges, he got arrested about a week before I went in. His name is Marty. And Marty, who I got to know real well because we spent about 3 months together in a 28 by 30 cell. We spent a lot of really close time together. Marty got arrested and charged with, I'm just going to look this up so I don't misspeak. Marty, this was in Pratt, Kansas, which is rural and white. I don't recommend driving through, well, rural Kansas at all, but certainly don't drive through Pratt if you're from out of town, and certainly not black, but also Mexican. Marty's Mexican, local family who was kind of victimized by the cops, the sheriffs. He turned himself in a few days before me. And his charges were, actually, he had a lower bond than me. And he was looking at less time than me. Okay, so he didn't have higher charges, but they read off scarier than mine. Martin, 29 years old, $75,000 bond, charges of kidnapping, inflicting bodily harm, terrorizing the victim, domestic battery, criminal threat, criminal damage to property. And then at the bottom of the article, they make sure to mention that he has previous convictions for DUI and fleeing the police, according to Kansas Department of Corrections. So he's got these big ass sounding charges, and he does. I didn't know him beforehand, but I knew his family. I knew his brother-in-law real well. And Martin, real good guy, real nice guy, for real. Legit, sincere, kind, very soft-spoken. I hear he's not a good drunk. He does not remember, and this is a lot of people go, "Oh fuck, I got fucked up. I don't remember what happened last night," and they're full of shit. This dude, you can tell, like he really does not remember what happened this night when he got all these charges. He and I, nobody does except for the victim, but I can tell you with as much certainty as I can literally have, this isn't what happened to her. So he got drunk, um, doesn't remember. He woke up at home with warrants because his ex-girlfriend went and told the police this shit happened. Apparently she had some a few cuts on her right arm or something. Um, Basically said he came over, tied her up, beat her up, blah blah blah, and then left and went home and went to sleep. She had her dad with her, who's I think that he's a pastor, something down there, some sort of like white guy position of bullshit prominence entrenched in the local inbred community. But she went in with her dad. They filed a police report. By the way, dad hates Marty. And that's it. All the cops need is that report. The prosecutor dumps these charges on him. They're happy to have them because he's a Mexican guy from the Mexican family where, there's a bit of petty crime, but they've got, I think that his brother, basically he's one of three brothers, and they all rotate through prison. Now Marty's in prison, as well as the brother-in-law that I knew on the outside, DA. Actually, DA came on Talking with Famous People once with me back in the day. But this is a group of people who are routinely hounded and persecuted by Pratt's law enforcement. So when they had Marty, the youngest, the only one they haven't sent to prison, he's got two older brothers. His sister died, and his brother-in-law had just gotten out of prison. He's the only one they haven't sent to prison, but they were thrilled to have this. So and of course, nobody can afford that bond. I was lucky enough to have money and family and a really good friend who was also my defense attorney at the time. Like, I was very lucky to be networked enough to keep getting out on bond. But the average person, if you're sitting in jail awaiting trial with $75,000 bond and several felony charges, I mean, you can't. The retainer for a lawyer, a private attorney for this would be 12 grand, probably 10 grand. I mean, thousands of dollars. So you're stuck with a private or with a public defender, which that's a different story for a different day. But public defenders are fucking garbage in Kansas. So, and I don't. Marty never went to trial. His shitbag public defender, worked him out a plea deal with the shitbag public attorney or prosecutor. That would have been Tracy Beverlin prosecuting, and I think that he had Rob Eisenhower as his defense attorney. If anybody cares who small town petty crooked legal system in Pratt County is. Rob, the first time I got raided and arrested, I'm sitting in jail with $100,000 bond and no charges. They haven't even charged me yet. Actually, they're holding me without bond. They raided me, arrested me straight out of bed, and took me to jail. I'd been in jail for 24 hours in a holding cell, hadn't talked to anybody, hadn't gotten a bond. My lawyer was out of town, so he called a different attorney to come, talk to me, and that was Rob. And Rob comes in, and I'm refusing to get booked into general population. You get booked in, they take your mug shot, put it up on the website as public information, and then you go into general population. I said I wasn't getting booked in because I don't have any fucking charges, and I don't want to be put on display. Rob comes in, and he's just like frazzled out of his mind. He goes, I hear you're not getting booked in. First thing he says to me, I walk into the conference room. They give you a little padded room that's supposed to be private to talk to your attorney, and don't trust that shit. It's not private. But he goes, oh my God, I heard you're not getting booked in. You're making Dan mad, the jail administrator. That shouldn't be the first thing you say to your client. I don't give a fuck about Dan. I hope Dan's mad. I hope Dan's fat ass has a goddamn heart attack. He should stop wearing that bulletproof vest that he squeezes into every morning. Way too fat for that shit, Dan. Anyways, this is the kind of defense attorney that Marty got. And he was looking at, maybe he was looking at more. He was looking at 20 years. I was looking at 17. He got, I don't remember how many years he got, but his earliest possible release date is January 3rd of 21. So he probably got 7 years. He probably got 7 years and could possibly get paroled after 4. But his charges that he ended up with were aggravated battery and criminal threat. So, that is how these sort of crimes work a lot, where it's domestic or it's accused. A man rapes a woman, a man beats up a woman, whatever it is. Women get the benefit of the doubt. Everybody knows about that. But what people don't pay a lot of attention to is what the cops want, what the prosecutor wants, or how if you're in a small shitbag town and you'd really like to put brother number 3 away, since brother number 2 just got out, and you've got a victim. I mean, it doesn't matter how credible or uncredible that victim is, because you wanted this dude anyways. One of my informants or snitches, whatever, Scott Chesney. Scott still lives in Pratt. The other one was my other snitch was James Rich. James has been missing since a while. I think James is missing. Scott still alive and well in Pratt, Kansas. Got a new girlfriend or new wife now, who I think that I'm Facebook friends with, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, Scott Chesney was one of my witnesses. He'd never met me. I've still never met Scott. And his wife, his ex-wife, that's a fat, terrible piece of garbage. Just dragging cops all over the place with her. But he got fussy because his wife was running around on him. And he went and talked to the cops. He went to talk to the sheriffs, to Max Barrett. And as far as I can tell, he just threw a shit fit. and like a temper tantrum testimony and said, blah 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 blah. My wife is a whore, and she's running around with doing all these drugs with all these drug people, and this is who they are. And he named like all sorts of people, tons of people. Um, I was one of them. He had never met me. He did, but the police were happy to have my name. They were happy to have him uh, as a witness on the affidavit. They didn't give a fuck if it was not credible or if he was in there testifying for because he was mad at his ex-wife, who was fucking around on him a lot, but not with me. God, no. Scott, no, I would never touch her. But it doesn't matter. That was plenty for them. Let me see. Let me pull up this report and see how many people he snitched on. And actually, another person that he snitched on is not Marty, but Marty's brother-in-law, who I knew, who I've known for a while, DA. Scott Chesney. Scott Chesney is a snitch. Scott Chesney. He works at Log Tech LLC, whatever that is. I think he's a lineman or something. I also think he's a tweaker himself. He's also very certainly a stalker. Very stalkerish. I'm just filling time scumbagging scumbaggy people with noise while I find I'm looking for. There it is, affidavit for search warrant 1. All right, Scott Chesney. This affidavit also includes, for people who don't know, a Talking with Famous People reference, a video. Talking with Famous People was after a lot of surveillance for a long time in my investigation. All right. Scott Chesney called the sheriff's office and requested to talk to Max Barrett, the undersheriff, and the guy who investigated me for fucking years. He wanted to tell me that his wife, Amanda Chesney, was a crack whore who was known as Soccer Mom among the drug people of Pratt. But she did not have any drugs at their house, so the cops didn't need to look at the Chesney house, just address these people. he began to complain about the circle she was running with. Alan Roberts, Ed Taryn, Jessica Hunter. I'm going to start leaving out last names. Probably. Jared Rosenbaum. Apparently not. DA, a large black male who live in town. They are big drug users and dealers. Shitty grammar. And Deadrian DA, a large black male. See, this is the type of sheriff's department that Pratt has. Will, Russell, Richard. David Chauncey, Greg Rooster, or the banker. The banker is Taylor from Pratt. There's more. Computer Dave. So I don't know how many that was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So he mentions 12 people that they listed here. I know that they were happy to include in the affidavit. I know they're happy to have my name. I know that. Yeah, I mean, all these are people who they were hounding, and some of them were, needed to be maybe hounded a bit, if anybody does. But some of this, he says that there is a large group of drug people at that residence daily, and all they do is smoke dope all day, every day. Not my residence, different one. We got the large black male line. That's the undersheriff's paraphrasing, not homie Scott Chesney's. With regards to me, it says here, I use meth with Amanda Chesney, or deals or buys from Chesney. So this is the type of shit I'm talking about. I got sort of off into it. I'm going to wrap this up because it's been going on for a long time. And I got to look at comments and stuff. But this is what I'm talking about. The enforcement of these laws is subjective. Convictions are subjective. Punishment is subjective. Enforcement is subjective. Subjective. It does not, offender registries do not give citizens what they actually want. Instead, it gives law enforcement and prosecuting attorneys another tool to beat the fuck out of defendants. It's not like a defendant has any fucking chance at all anyways. All the state has, state, feds, whoever, all they have to do is charge you. All they got to do is charge you, and you're fucked. The whole bullshit about, well, the courts will sort it out. If you're innocent, you can prove your innocence in court. Or the courts have, innocent. Just the whole thing is a crock of shit. And if anybody doesn't think it's a crock of shit, I'd be happy to have that talk with them. Leave a comment or something, and tell me what part of innocent until proven guilty you think is valid still, or what part of the criminal justice system respects defendants at all. If you get charged, you're fucked. You just got to try to get out of that situation with as little damage as possible. Sometimes that is taking a plea deal. That includes a sex crime, even though you didn't participate in one. Sometimes it includes, you know, whatever. You just don't know what it will include. Mine included possession. They had that line right there I read that says, I use meth with, or buy from, or sell to. That is the only evidence of distribution against me they had. They didn't have any customers. They didn't have a sting. They had that, and they had presumptive intent just based off quantity. So when you're charged, you got to get out with the least amount of damage you can. Sometimes that is taking a plea for something you're not guilty of. Frequently, it is taking a registration attachment, because when you're looking at 17 years, you don't give a fuck if you've got to register for the rest of your life. That's fine. I'll register. Just let me out of this place. Which I didn't even get into defendants' rights, citizens' rights. What a catastrophe it is to have such a humongous number of second-class citizens, and growing number, and for what? I mean, there's constitutional, legal, and philosophical reasons why people should be able to pay their debt to society, and not only should they be allowed to move on, in my opinion. Society wants criminals rehabilitated, in theory. I heard someone say on Sean Atwood, if you don't know who Sean Atwood is, check out Sean Atwood. He's the shit. But he had a chick on who's a sexual, basically she's a profiler in Europe for law enforcement for the actual really bad sort of sex offenders and sadistic, the people that you want to know where they're at. And she explained it real well. She said that society wants three things from a criminal justice system. First, it wants revenge, because that's how people are. First, it wants revenge. Then it wants redemption for the victim, and also society that hurts, since individuals are a component of it, it does damage society. You can see how that works on a mental, emotional, cultural, societal level. So they want redemption for the victim and society, if possible. You know, if the victim is dead, that's going to be hard to, or restoration. It's going to be hard to restore a dead person. But to the extent possible, society wants revenge against the perpetrator, restoration for the victim and society. And then the third thing they want is rehabilitation and reformation for the offender. It is the last desire in order of priorities or importance, what the masses scream for. But it is nevertheless what citizens want from their criminal justice systems, and that is, and these offender registries fly in the face of that. Fly in the face of it. As do all sorts of lingering side effects of interacting with the criminal justice system and its criminals. But so that's just food for thought. I think it's also unconstitutional. I don't know the offender registries, I think, are unconstitutional. I'm not sure how. I just remember hearing my defense attorney say that a couple times, sort of almost to himself, when we were going over my case. But he's a good lawyer, so if he says they're unconstitutional, I bet they are. But that's the police state we live in. So no, we shouldn't register anybody, in my opinion. We sure as shit should not make new registries registering more different people for crimes that are increasingly ambiguous, personal, and difficult to verify. When you get into domestic relationships, they're sticky. Nothing's cut and dry. Nothing's as black and white as he's an abuser, she's a victim. I mean, sometimes it is, but not mostly. And I think that when we try to paint real life at all, but particularly these sort of sticky situations and in that sort of two-tone way, it doesn't do a service to anybody. It does a disservice to society, to the victims, to the perpetrators. If let's walk down the hypothetical road. What if you break up with what if a guy's watching? What if you break up with your girlfriend and she's mad at you, so she wants to file a claim, but also she knows who your ex before her was, so they team up because nothing makes friends like having the same enemy, and they both file reports separately but together. Now you've got shit stacked and you're fucked. And this situation has now trumped up, it's been beefed up to where there are protocols, there are registries, there are, more black and white rules applied to gray situations. Okay, now what if your two exes did this, but you've got kids with one or both of them? Who's better off now? Are you better off? No, you're fucked. Are the chicks better off? No, they weren't in harm in the first place. They were just mad. Is your kid better off? No, dad's stigmatized now. And is society better off? No, they've got cumbersome infrastructure to manage the registry that you're on. Also, you're going to have domestic or family services, court services or family services, whoever, that department's going to have to manage now dad's interaction with the kids, assuming he is interacting with them. I mean, it's just a shitload of money getting pumped into government programs that don't work and cause harm, but enrich the criminal justice system. So with that, I think that I've rambled about as fucking long as I can. I'm going to quick scroll through some of these comments. Lin Yin Chen says he's 50-50 on the question, should stalkers be registered? But yes, for the serial abuser stalkers, not so much for the ones that only did it to one specific individual and show no signs of repeating the offense. That's a good example of a customer, like somebody in society wanting to know who's like a foundationally flawed human being that's going to find people to victimize. But that's not the divide that's just not how these things are implemented. Without okay, this looks interesting. Rowan Morgan, without serious intervention, behaviors like stalking and abuse will only escalate. People who engage in these behaviors do not stop on their own. That is true. The problem is that things like um, stalking, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, there are a lot of ways to be an insidious, harmful person that are legal. And you can't outlaw being a dickhead. So we have to just understand that there are going to be where there are people, there can be victims. There will be victims because people, that's just the nature of people to some extent, and that we can't we don't have the mechanism to outlaw harmful behavior, and that this sort of registry will be used for more harm than it will for good. So yeah, things like that do escalate, but um, so do other types of abuse, like police abuse of citizens, or um, angry ex abuse of dudes, or I mean, just the nature of people is that they're regularly assholes to each other. So, is this going to prevent more harm or cause it? And I think that this is a clear cut example of it will cause more harm. I mean, without getting too far into the specifics of domestic issues, the people who are in the most danger are not the ones who go to the police, anyways. They're the ones who are too scared to in the first place, or the ones who have been so conditioned to, so brainwashed that they don't even know just this would, I think that the client victim for this sort of thing is way more likely to garner, it's more likely to gather the angry ex-girlfriend, the or somebody who's not really being abused or in danger, even if they're quite sure that they are. Um, but the real people in danger, I don't think that they'd ever make it. They'd never find this registry most of the time. It will be most useful. This registry and this status would be most useful for custody and divorce battles. And that is where you can guarantee you'd see it. Hi, Jean Grey. Yeah, I saw that the instructions just explained this stuff to me, but I set it up with the pictures, and then I was late to this, so I haven't read what it does. Yes, dealer equals trafficker equals distributor. Basically, it's a with drug law, it's a legal distinction between somebody who's doing drugs and somebody who's profiting from drugs. It's a made up distinction. Uh, there's there are Some, but not many. I mean, people do both. If you're using, you end up dealing some. If you're dealing, you're probably using. You very, 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 very rarely meet somebody who is exclusively a drug dealer. Like never, almost never. Hambone, are all criminal records public already? I am sadly ill-informed about most legal/criminal issues. I don't know all of them. I think the FBI has a national sex offender registry. Aside from that, it is going to be a state-by-state thing. I know here in Kansas, the KBI is quite on top of their shit, and there's actually two different systems. There's the KBI, and there's also Casper, Kansas. What's Casper? Kansas Department of Corrections, the Kansas Adult Supervised Population Electronic Repository System. So, for people like me or Marty or anybody really who's been issued a DOC number is on Casper. Anybody who's a registered offender is on the KBI. Usually if you're on one anymore, you're on the other. The registry laws in Kansas are relatively new. So like my buddy who showed up and made me late to start this, he did 10 years of Fed time, and he also got out before having to worry about any registry laws. But yeah, the distinction between a drug dealer and a drug user is mostly make-believe. So all criminal records are not public. However, depending on what type of offenses your state registers, it'll be a state-by-state thing. Kansas registers a lot. Missouri, just across state line, doesn't register much. So drug crimes are completely different than violent crimes. I agree. However, I think that the distinction, some reality gets lost in the distinction with just the word crimes, because the reality is that drug use and violent behavior are completely different. But the criminal conviction is not real. I mean, it's just absolutely meaningless in my eyes, as far as what actually happened. Too many people are in jail for drug offenses. Agree. I don't know when I got a gangsta hashtag, but I appreciate that. Linian Chin, I would suspect drug peddling is less offensive than assault because some people choose to do the drugs you're selling, not so much to be attacked. Yes, I believe that anything between two consenting adults should be legal. So all drugs should be legal. Prostitution, gambling, anything that's a sin, but that consenting adults want to engage in, that should all be legal. And the fucking brain mistake that people make is assuming that legality is endorsement or promotion. They think, oh, if it was legal, then everybody would be doing it. No, motherfucker, everybody's doing it anyways. The question isn't, do you like people to do drugs or do you not like people to do drugs? The question is, do you want to throw people in prison if they do drugs? That's the decision you have to make. But people get it all fucked up and think that they're voting for whether or not drugs are a good thing or whether or not gambling is a good thing. Nah, that's not it. What characterizes as a bad person? Austin asks, what characterizes as a bad person? Lin Yin Chin says a bad person is one who is not aligned to the group objectives. I think bad person is what does that mean? A bad person is anybody who's doing the opposite of what the person calling the name is. So if I say you're a bad person, it means I don't like what you're doing. If you say I'm a bad person, it means you don't like what I'm doing. That's literally how the fuck that phrase works, as well as a lot of other phrases. Almost never do you hear people say somebody's a bad person when they're in the same court. I mean, we've all done bad things. We've all done good things. Bad person's another one of those black and white distinctions that it only exists up here, very rarely exists in reality, because there's too many shades of gray. But certainly the way that that phrase is thrown around is bad people are the ones doing what I don't like. So if you ask me, bad people are prosecutors and scumbag cops. And if you ask them, they're people who don't like police officers or people who break the law. And if you ask Lin Yin Chen, it's people who don't like robots. And if you ask whatever, you know. Hambone doesn't think there should be any specific registries as long as criminal records are entirely public. How is a registry supposed to keep people safe? Yes. It only makes life harder for free people, aka. That's Hambone's opinion. I don't see how public criminal records do much better, really. I mean, I guess I agree about the registries, but I don't know why. I guess I don't know how I feel about public criminal records. The arrest charges, when you get arrested and charged, that's all public record. I think nationally, but you got to know where to look for it. You got to look on the inmate roster, little local websites. That's also where you're going to find the defendant at their worst. They're looking their worst. Then they got their mugshot. They just got the big charges. They haven't taken a plea deal for lesser charges yet. Marty's looking scary as shit, but now he's in doing a 7-piece for criminal threat that he doesn't even remember. I guarantee this is not, maybe he's got a drunk side that I just don't know about, but I lived with the dude for 3 stressful months in a 30 by 30 cinder block room. And this is a mild-mannered, nice person. Justice after justice. Yes, Rowan asks, anyone ever take a look at the government intervention? Ever take a step back and look at government intervention trying to turn us into a nanny state and just hope for the zombie apocalypse to hit the reset button? Sure as shit do, Rowan Morgan. I don't know if goof means pedo in jail. I've never heard that. Chomo. Not in the jail I was at. I never heard goof. Everybody's Charles Benson made the important stand that he is anti-pedo. We all are. Nobody likes pedos. I seem to distrust white people. I never thought about it that way. I don't distrust white people. I sympathize with not white people. Rowan Morgan dropped an excellent quote. I didn't know that was Lamb of God. Whoever appeals to the law against his fellow man is either a fool or a coward. Whoever cannot take care of himself without that law is both. For a wounded man shall say to his assailant, if I die, you are forgiven. If I live, I will kill you. Such is the rule of honor. I'm going to put that quote in the comment, in the description box if I remember. Yeah, I like that quote a lot. I didn't know it was Lamb of God. Maybe I did. Crushing it with that mic, Mang. Thank you, Mike. Vague, so vague. And shit getting planned. Angantir. Your name is phonetically difficult. Yes, money is the best tool to defend yourself. I agree. Way more than innocence. If you hear somebody say, or kind of run along the line of, well, I ain't got nothing to hide, or if you ain't got nothing to hide, you ain't got nothing to worry about, is like woefully fucking naive, either intentionally or just that's not how that shit works. Yinlin Chen S. So bottom line is bias of those with agendas will warp legal procedures to whatever they desire, question mark. I am, let's see. Yes. The problem with the legal system is the problem with, it's the same problem that communism has, is the same problem. It's the same problem that humanity has with every single fucking institution of power, and it's that who polices the police. We all want government to, people want government to keep them safe from pedophiles, but like the government's pretty fucking pedophile-ish. Pizzagate, Epstein. I mean, like, it just doesn't work that way. There's nobody that can be trusted with that sort of power to even if they could work out the logistics to use it well. What about the ethics or the moral integrity? That's why socialism or communism doesn't work, because the theory that people will work, to each as they need, from each as they can give, that's a great efficiency theory, that everybody produces as much output as they can and uses as much resources as they need. Then we'll be fair. Well, no, that's a math equation. That shows how a perfectly functioning machine would run. That's how you want to set up a business model. No, that's not. I mean, the point is that sort of efficiency doesn't apply to people, because people work as hard as they need to, or as they want to, as they're incentivized to. Nobody busting their ass for the glory of Soviet Russia. Happily, willingly. Ain't nobody going, you know what? God damn it, I need new socks because these have holes in it, but they'll last me another week. I can make it another week on these socks. That's just not how fucking people work. So, and there is no entity, there's no person who can handle absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. I do believe that is true. If it doesn't work for one person, how the fuck's it going to work for a government or an agency. It's just a group of people. It's still people executing these wishes that no person can handle. It's mental butt fuckery. A lot of laws are put in place to protect certain groups. That's correct. Hmm. All right, now y'all are being weird. Christmas is a pagan holiday. No, Christmas. No, it's what it's the winter holiday. And you can decorate the winter holiday with Jesus if you want or not. Why do I attract so many INTPs? Real talk. I didn't know that this was a recurring problem for you. INTPs love INTJs. I'm not directing this at anybody here, but both INTPs and INTJs are super, super common mistypes, and very glamorized types. So it's very possible that INTPs and INTJs are not either of those things. They're just introverts. All right. I'm getting out of here. It's been a hell of a ramble. Do you all agree now that registries are stupid and should be abolished? Yes, Taylor, we do. Awesome. Me too. Fuck the system. How do I end this broadcast?